I came up very much in the, a man doesn't have these problems. And so I'm here to learn some of the different points of view, much like Saira's dad. That was pretty much my experience as well. Toughen up, get to it. And it actually did work for me because, I had some periods where I was, depressed or manic or whatever, and I was able to handle it. And now I don't have any issues. And I never saw a therapist. I never did anything. I just kind of bullied my way through. And I learned on my own how to regulate my emotions and not allow outside factors to affect my mental well-being so much. But once again, I don't think that's things that most people can do. Most people need to go somewhere and get some help. And so I'm here to learn a lot about how the proper channels would be, because I believe my experience was not the way it should go.
I kind of want to get an idea from each person on what mental health means to you based on your knowledge of it and then your cultural background.
Coming right out of college, my first job was, so I've done mental health at all levels actually. So all the way from tech to the nurse to the administrator or mid-level administrator in the behavioral hospital. So before, in being introduced to it in the formal sense as an employee, I did not realize how many diagnoses there were, just how, because we don't really learn that stuff in health administration, or you do learn some in nursing, but not as deep as the diagnoses go and the behaviors and symptoms and all of that. So I was highly or heavily immersed in that life very early on. And what's weird is that, people with those diagnoses kind of became my norm. So it really changed my outlook on just how high functioning people can be out in this world dealing with different types of issues. We had doctors on some of our units. We had therapists on units. You see what I'm saying? So on the chemical dependency unit, not really on the acute. That's drug addicts and some people on the street. But it'd be we had athletes, of course, on those units. So yeah, it really immersed me into that life, saying, "Oh wow, this is the people who are on TV putting on a brave face, but yet they were checked into the behavioral hospital last weekend, right?" So
people you didn't even think would be.
You would never, people you would never think, and you have to know all of their business. You have to, you see their meds, you see their psychosocial history. If you take time to read that, you just realize people are dealing with real world issues, and they have to kind of put it to the back burner to put on a brave face for the world, for their children, and basically do life after the fact. So
on my father's side, they're Caribbean, and they don't believe in mental health. They're like, you need to pray, or it's just like a demon, or it's like negative energy. You need to like go for a walk or get out of the house or stop being lazy. Depression is not real. You're just being lazy. I think that was like definitely in my dad's side of the culture heavily advocated for. In my mom's side, it wasn't really like talked about until my great grandmother actually, this was back in a time when they didn't like have diagnosis and mental health wasn't as known. And so she actually got the lobotomy. Yeah. So like they actually admitted her into a psych facility, and she had a lobotomy, and she also had electroshock therapy. And after 3 sessions of that, she actually went and killed herself. Because back then, so in my mom's side of the family, it became like very like everyone is very like Thanksgiving. We all basically had like a family therapy session almost. So on my mom's side, they are very like, your life matters. If you feel like you want to hurt yourself, anything like that, I don't care what time it is, you can go get help. She'll help you find counseling. So 2 totally different spectrums of the culture. And I've kind of trying to been educating my father about, you know, mental health and things like that. Because I, even as someone who suffers from it, I see it in him, right? But you can't diagnose people unless they want to be, you know, get help and stuff like that. And then again, being in the military, I think I talked about it on another episode that I was on. I actually did see a soldier and have experienced firsthand suicide and the secondhand effects of that. So mental health is like huge.
To me, I think there's how I look at this is there's mental illness and there's mental health. And when you have mental health, or mental health in general, does not mean the absence, or I think this is how society views it. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up with how society views it and how I view it. Society views mental health as not having an illness, but it's like, but how does one obtain mental health? And I don't think we talk about it, at least in America. In my family, it's kind of like, well, if you know you're feeling depressed or whatever, you go get a medication, but that's it. No one really talks about the brain side of it, or just the overall psychological side of it, and the things that you can do in terms of mental health, like physical health. There's mental illness. I'll leave that to the, you know, the professionals, Nelson, the psychiatrists. But I don't think we talk enough about mental health. And mental health is not going to take a bubble bath and, you know, talking to a friend sometimes. How do you process what's going on in your mind? What are you even feeling? We're not even taught how to feel. You know what I mean? And that actually sometimes negative feelings are okay. When you have a loss in the family, when things don't go right sometimes, yeah, you want to feel like crap sometimes. But how do you deal with that? That's how I view mental health. So, okay.
Thank you for that. I think that was an excellent addition, because that is true. That how to process it. You're going through it. You know, someone tells you, okay, you're going through something, but what do you do while you're going through it? That's a good point. Thank you, Coach K.
I agree with Coach K that, you know, we all have different definitions to a certain point. And if you have not been diagnosed, because nowadays it's so common, you know, for people to say, oh, I have this. For example, I have dyslexia. That's dyslexia. How you call it in English? Dyslexia. I'm sorry. Dyslexia. So with numbers, but I am aware that I have it. Have been diagnosed with it? No. And then when you read like, oh, about depression, and then the more you start reading, yes, I'm not sleeping well. And then you feel like, oh, I am depressed. But feeling depressed and being diagnosed with depression syndrome, or, you know, it's totally different, because we all can have depressive moments in our life, ups and downs. We all can have stressful moments. We all can go through the burnout moments in our life, but not being specifically diagnosed. The problem is that we are not putting the emphasis when we feel this way to look for help. And that's when it starts becoming, you know, a tendency. And then we feel like, okay, you know, it's okay. And then we start having this thoughts for some people that don't know how to process those emotions, because at the end of the day, it has to do with our emotions. We're not taught about emotional intelligence, how to, you know, manage our emotions and not react over those, how to handle situations, stressful situations. And, you know, I also think that some people give advices without someone asking for an advice. Most people know what you have to do, you just don't do it. So unsolicited advice should not be done. It's like you shouldn't be giving no advice to no one when they're not asking for it, because people know what they have to do. We just don't do it. What you need to do is just listen. That's all you have to do. Listen. And you know, let the other person vent out, because that's what people need, like just someone that can hear them and feel supported, you know, not judge. So, you know, it's a very complicated topic, to be honest. Now, when my background, no one in my family has had any type of, you know, issue like this. But I will go with what simply Indy was saying. Like, my dad is so tough. Like, I remember when I was little, I would feel bad. And he's like, no, until you're dead, you're going to go to school. He didn't care how I was feeling. He was like, no, you're going. But he's so disciplined and like strict that he didn't care if I was feeling a certain way. So to him, that's like weakness. Oh, you're just being weak right now, And it's like, no, we all have the right to feel, and it's okay. So
I was born in Bangladesh, and my parents came like when I was 9, so we all moved to Canada. And with that, like, my parents had their own mental, like, they had depression, they went through their own thing, and it kind of projected to the kids, so it followed through. Like, there was fights in the home, and I wish my parents believed in therapy, believed in like mental health support, right? But they didn't go and look for it, because they never believed in it. Their parents never believed in it. Being from where I'm from, they were just so like, they think if you say anything about therapy, you're going to a mental asylum, or like you're calling them crazy. I tried with my parents. Like, right now, I'm in therapy. I believe in. I want to break that like generational curse or generational belief with my daughter, right? So me and my daughter, we talk. I have to actually, like, after my divorce, I was under like some deep depression, so I had to go to take therapy, and I saw that I wasn't my best self. So I had to see that, and kind of convince my parents. And when I tried to go talk to my parents about it, like, it was just shut down, right? So like, I try to, like, I know where, like, what to say around them certain times. Like, even till now, I think they need help, but it's just that, like, I try to be like, I have to tiptoe around it, right? I can't really be too aggressive, or like, I have to think about their feelings, and it's exhausting in a way. But I mean, I think, like, I just have to deal with it.
Mental health, that term has really just been thrown around, and we as a society have really messed it up and distorted it. Really, mental health is just a psychological or emotional state. I mean, at its core, that's what it is. So it doesn't necessarily indicate the presence of a mental illness. Your mental health can be messed up if you just had a bad day. If you just been down for the day, that day your mental health wasn't good. I think because it's been so heavily stigmatized, we automatically associate it with depression. We associate it with anxiety. We associate it with needing to be on medication or anything like that. And I think we need to kind of take a step back and realize there's levels to it. There's tiers in mental health. Some people need tier 1 services where it's just preventative things, where it's just talking with somebody. Sometimes they need like tier 3, where it's like heading into the medication and heading into working with a psychiatrist or working with a therapist on long-term care. And then there's also the separation between having a mental illness and having a personality disorder. It's not the same thing. Somebody can, and even if we're not even going that far, someone that's had a sudden life change, and like they got fired from their job and they've been depressed for the past month, how we approach them. I mean, because technically they could be going through a depression, but because we as a society have kind of hardened to those types of things, we kind of don't look at that as like pain. And I think that's I'm kind of going to be all over the place as I'm gathering my thoughts, but I just think that we need to understand that mental health is a very broad term. And I think we as a society and a community need to start getting a little bit more nuanced when we're talking about what's going on with each other, whether it is if we're dealing with something severe, like we're dealing with like really depression and we're dealing with suicidal ideations, or are we dealing with, I've been down for the past couple months because things haven't been going my way, or to, just anything in between. But what's really bothering me is that everybody has kind of dipped their toe in the water in dealing with mental health. So we're seeing a lot of other professions and people that'll learn a little bit about what entails mental health and then create a whole job or a whole way of approaching it, and it just ends up muddying the water a lot more, so it becomes a very confusing thing.
That's interesting that you say that, Nelson, about losing the job. I met a gentleman, and he asked me out on a date, and he kept calling me like all day, and I'm thinking like, what are you, not at work? You don't have a job? And he's like, oh no, actually I got fired. And I was like, oh, you probably shouldn't be dating. You should probably be looking for a new job. But he was like, no, I'm taking time to heal. And I was like, what? He was, I thought it was like, I thought it was funny, but when you're saying it, he said you have to think about it like this. When you're with a person for a long time and you break up in that relationship, you need time to heal. He's like, why is it any different from a job? You know, you've invested, you spend all this time, all these hours, you give to this company, and then they just fire you. He said, I need time to process that. And I was just like, how much time do you need before, because you think you're a grown man, you've got to pay the bills. What are you going to do? You expect to just hop right back into it. Like, no, you can't just take time to heal. But that is a form of,
I think losing a job is like worse than, losing a relationship, because you're losing money. So I don't know. That's weird.
But you don't think about it like that. You're like, okay.
With your identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
That's pretty deep.
And if you get fired too, you also got to look at why you got fired. And so I like the fact that he took some time to kind of reflect on that, because one thing, if we just go into panic mode, find the next job, we might be bringing some of the same things that caused us to get fired the first time into the next job. So reflection is just something that all of us need to, we should reflect on ourselves every day. Take a look at how we felt like we did for the day, things we did wrong, things we did right. Like that's a small thing that we can do to constantly keep our mental health in check. But if you have the savings to be able to kind of take a couple of months off and enjoy the unemployment for a while, just do what you got to do.
Yeah. No, and I understand it now, but like when he told me at the time, I was like, that's not what a man's supposed to do. It's supposed to provide. You got to get back out there. You got to get another job. Like, that's what men do. But in actuality, a man's mental health is very important. You can't even perform well or even interview well that could be a break in your self-confidence. So you might not even feel that you deserve a new job until you like build yourself back up. So, I understand it more so now, but when he first said it, I was like, that sounds weird. Never heard of someone trying to recover from a job breakup, but
that also brings up a interesting point. Some people don't have the ability to do what he did, because I hear what he's saying about taking time, and that's best case scenario, because most of America doesn't have savings to put off trying to get another job immediately. I don't know if anybody's ever been on unemployment, but I've had that paperwork come through for people I've had to let go of before, and I've been getting yelled at and cursed out like, this is less than half of what I made. I was like, really? So yeah, some people just don't have the luxury, unfortunately, to take that space and time to heal. And of course, that will just compound the problem.
Well, that I quit a job and decided to take a couple months off because I had what they call a fuck you fund, and I implemented it. But what Trigger Mike says, right, the majority of Americans don't have that, guys. That is an incredible privilege to be able to say, well, fuck you, I'll do what I want for a couple of months. And I didn't think of it as mental healing because I was the one doing the breakup. But that is a very interesting analogy, Dr. Nelson, about how it does correlate to relationships, because as you stated, you can bring a lot of the bad stuff. If you were in a bad relationship, you can bring a lot of bad stuff into your next working relationship. So that was very interesting for me. But no, Kelly knows that I was one of those people that was just like, I'm going to take some time off. And then somebody called me up and found a job for me and everything was fine. But no, most people can't even do that. I'm kind of embarrassed that I was able to do that. It makes me seem like I'm super privileged. I'm not. I just am good saving money. As
He
far as
always,
mental,
he always acts like he's broke. Oh, I don't know if I can do it. I'm like, we know you can do it.
money is doing what it's supposed to do in different places, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the mental health and where you're from and what your background is on it. I do have a minor in psychology, but once again, I did not go far enough down there to where I learned the proper techniques. I'm honestly here, I'll try to contribute as much as I can to the conversation, but I'm learning from all of you because I came up very much in the, a man doesn't have these problems. And so I'm here to learn some of the different points of view, much like Saira's dad. That was pretty much my experience as well. Toughen up, get to it. And it actually did work for me because, I had some periods where I was, depressed or manic or whatever, and I was able to handle it. And now I don't have any issues. And I never saw a therapist. I never did anything. I just kind of bullied my way through. And I learned on my own how to regulate my emotions and not allow outside factors to affect my mental well-being so much. But once again, I don't think that's things that most people can do. Most people need to go somewhere and get some help. And so I'm here to learn a lot about how the proper channels would be, because I believe my experience was not the way it should go.
I agree with what Indy said about her Caribbean side. Like my South Asian side is kind of like that too. It's a big stigma, mental health. And so we just kind of think it's non-existent. It still is that way, unfortunately, in India. Just to add, I would think like a good positive mental state would be just like waking up in the morning and being happy and having goals. Not having any barriers to those goals, just, being, having that positive attitude about life and things like that. That's what I would think of like a positive mental state. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned my immigrant parents. Dad was super strict, just like Saira said as well. And so, when we're little, we think, our parents can do no wrong. But then, when you grow older, you kind of see all those things. And there were, abusive, and also just, it was just like my way or the highway. Respect was a really big thing. And that's big in Asian culture as well. In the Asian culture, it's about like, I'm sure everyone knows Asians are good at math, that kind of thing. So it's like really about, high performing, so if it's 0 to 100, nothing in between, no gray area. And so that's, it's a lot of dismissiveness. So it's just a lot of crazy stuff.